Hello friends, welcome to Knowledge India once again. This is the part 2 of AWS Transfer Family video. In this particular video, we are going to look at the demo of this particular service. We will see from scratch that how do you go ahead and set it up and how can you then further go ahead and use it. If you have not watched the part 1 of this video, I would highly recommend that you take a pause here and go through the part 1 of the video so that you have a complete understanding of this particular service and then come here and look at the video completely. So let us go ahead and dive into it. I'm there in the AWS Transfer Family service basically, and as you can see, it is available for 3 protocols as we discussed in the first video. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set up a server here, but before that, as I already told you, the data gets saved in S3. So what I've done here is I have gone ahead and in S3, I've set up 2 buckets. There is a specific reason here why I have created 2 buckets, because I wanted to show you, certain possible scenarios. As you can see, the first bucket is in Northern Virginia and the second one is intentionally kept in Oregon region. And we will see that how can we go ahead and set up one server, and with that we'll be able to deal with both the buckets. Yes, it is possible. You can actually have a one server setup, and with that you can go ahead and use different buckets which are there in different regions as well. It is perfectly possible. So let us go ahead and do it. So let us go ahead and create the server. When we click there, we get this option. You can go ahead and choose more than one protocols as well. It is possible. But in this time, we are gonna just choose the first one, which is SFTP. The next point is about identity provider. We discussed about this in the first video, where if you go ahead and select service managed option, the user credentials are gonna be stored within this particular service, or you can think user credentials are gonna be stored within the server, right? And user is gonna use his regular SSH keys. You can also choose custom option, in which case you will go ahead and set up an API gateway and you'll have a custom Lambda function behind that which will interact with your identity provider. In the scenarios where if you are setting this up in order to replace your existing SFTP server, the chances are you will go with the first one. The next thing is endpoint configuration. You may set up the server to be publicly accessible, or you may set it up only in a way that it would be only accessible within a VPC. Both the ways it's possible. Now let's say if you have a particular requirement within your application or project where you want to set up an SFTP server, but that should be used only by different applications, or um, by certain users who are logged into machines within a VPC, right? I mean, the idea is if you want to keep it private, then go with the second one. Otherwise, if you are looking at a use case where you are expecting a third party organization or third party vendor to actually upload or download files, then you will go with the first one. So let us choose the publicly accessible option and we'll move ahead. You may also look at setting up custom hostname. If you want, you can go ahead and use DNS service and you can do that. The next thing is around the logging part. If you want to push logs from the service to CloudWatch logs, you can go ahead and do that as well. You'll have to define an IAM role for that, where you will have to give permission for the CloudWatch logs. Okay, so you'll have to do that, and then you choose that particular IAM role here. That is optional, so I'm not doing that here, but if you want, you can do it. You also have a thing, server host key. This is also optional, but in which scenarios it becomes important, you need to understand. If you are migrating your existing users from one of the older SFTP servers, you want to migrate all of them to this particular server, at that time this thing becomes important. Otherwise, you may just leave it blank. If it's just a new setup altogether, you may leave it blank. But if there was an existing SFTP server and now you want to use this particular server, then you may choose to copy the server host key from that machine and you will have to put it here. Okay, if you want, you can put certain tags For example, I'll put environment and I'll say demo. We'll say next, and that's it. You have to just review this and say create server. This should create your server, and if you click here, you will be able to see the details. This is the endpoint which your users are gonna use in order to connect to this particular server. So what we'll do is we'll also go ahead and use, let's say, WinSCP, and we'll try to connect to this particular server. But before we do that, we need to have users added to this, isn't it? So let's just see once again. The status is still starting, so we'll wait for just a couple of minutes here. This channel teaches you AWS and Azure in really easy and practical manner. There are a lot of demonstration videos already on the channel. As you can see, a lot of professionals got benefited from our videos, and you can read about them here. So if you are new, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. Alright guys, so our server is online now. I'll click here, and what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to add a user to this particular server. So I'll press on add user, and this particular screen is one of the most important screen which you need to understand, right? Of course, we'll go ahead and give it some name. I'm gonna call it test KI01. That's the name of the user. And you see, we have to choose users IAM role for Amazon S3 access. So if you remember in the first video, we talked about that uh, this particular user is going to is gonna ultimately upload the files or download the files to an S3 bucket, right? And the way AWS allows this user to interact with that particular S3 bucket is by by an IAM role. We are going to define that IAM role here, and that particular IAM role would be further used by that particular user. So what would we do? Let's see. We'll first go ahead and create an IAM role here. Okay, so let me go to IAM console. I'll go to roles, and I can press on create role. Now, though a particular user is ultimately going to use it, but please understand from IAM perspective which service would use this IAM role. It is the transfer service which will use. So in this particular step you will choose transfer. Say next. Now the next thing is that what type of permission would you want to give, you know to uh, to this particular user. So what permission you want to give? I should not say user, I should say that what permission would you like to give to this IAM role. Now, because the interaction has to happen with S3, a simple thing could be that you would want to give complete S3 related permission. So you may just go ahead and give S3 full access. That would do the job, but that's not probably a very good practice. You should not give any permission which is more than what the person needs to do. Okay, so let's say if this particular user, one which I'm creating now, the name is test ki01. If this has to interact with one of the two buckets, so we have two buckets here, one in Virginia and one in Oregon. If the person has to interact with, let's say, Virginia bucket, we may go ahead and write an IAM role which will only have permission to this particular bucket. We can do that, or we can write the IAM role and allow the access to both the buckets. Depends on your use case. But please understand, ideally you should always write the permissions so that it is only allowing what the user really has to do. Okay, so let's do one thing. In order to show you this demo and make it clear to you, let's consider that this particular user has to interact only with the bucket which is in the Virginia, in the northern Virginia. So let's do one thing. What we'll do is we'll go here and we'll say create policy. Let us write a policy quickly. So it's very easy. Choose S3. Okay, we can give all actions, right? Which is fine, but we will specify resource. So this becomes a bit tricky. So instead of in the bucket, I'm gonna specify uh, add ARN, and here we will specify the ARN of this bucket. So let me see if I can copy from here. Okay, and we'll just say review. Just 1 minute. I would like to see the JSON. Okay, so what does it say? It gives, allow. So basically, it has only given those things which are, um, okay, here it is. See, S3 star is given. In addition to that, there is this bucket level access is given for everything, which is basically, let's say, if this user wants, it can actually list down all the bucket. We actually do not require this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna get rid of this thing, you know, and we want that this user should be able to deal or interact only with this particular bucket, because we do not expect this role to be used from CLI or from management console, right? The person is going to use it only via some SFTP client. So this is what I'll give. I'll say review. I'm going to call it, let's say, NV bucket role, just giving a name. So I'll say create policy, and then ultimately we need to create the role. Um, and but this is actually our policy, okay? So what we'll do is, let us try to filter. We'll say customer managed, refresh this, and yep, this has come. So we'll select this particular policy and we'll quickly create our role. This role we are gonna call it, just so that it is easy, role 01, and I'll just put, let's say, NV, which is there for Northern Virginia. We'll say create role. So this gets created. Right now, coming back to this particular thing, I'll have to refresh here and we can check that this is visible. All right, so what does this mean? Test KI01 ultimately would be able to do only those things which are allowed in this particular role, which is interacting with the Northern Virginia bucket, right? Next thing is, uh, do you want to further scope down the policy to apply to this IAM user? If you want, you can further attach, a policy to this user additionally as well, right? Let's say you may take an approach that in this role, you just allow, you can go ahead and just allow S3 star on all the buckets. I'm just giving an example. You can do that. And then further, for this particular user, you may give an additional more restrictive policy here. That is also possible. Okay. Now, further to that, what you need to do is you will have to select the user directory. Okay. So let us go ahead and do that. So let us select this particular bucket. And then if we want, we can also further go ahead and specify a particular folder. Let's say within this, if I say folder 1. So what would happen whenever this user connects? For the first time, this user would land into Northern Virginia bucket, and within that folder 1, that is where he or she would land, and that would be like that user's home directory. Now the very important thing is this one, restricted. If you check this, what does that mean? It means that the user would be restricted at this level. Basically, the user cannot go any level above this. So which means, let's say user cannot go ahead and upload or do anything at the bucket level directly. He will be able to operate only inside folder 1 within that bucket. Many of the times you would want to do something like this. You'll set up one server. There will be one S3 bucket, and you want to allow 50 users to operate within that bucket. Now, how will you do that? You can go ahead and have separate folder for every user and put them in the restricted mode while you are provisioning them. So that way user 1 operates in folder user 1, user 2 operates in in another folder, let's say folder 2 or user 2, something like that. You basically create a separate folder for every user and mark it restricted. If you do not mark it restricted, what happens? User would land into this particular location, but if he wants, he can go further up into the hierarchy. That is possible. Okay, so for now we will go with this thing, and I will show you other examples as well. So with this, and then the next thing is we need to put the SSH public key for this particular user. You can use any online website. There are many online websites. So I've just selected one. I'll choose the key size, and I'll say generate. Without any passphrase. So this is the key which is generated, public and private part. So what you need to do is you take the public part, and you take this and put it here, right? And then just say add. You will also have to take the private part because we need to use this, with our WinSCP. So I'll just take this and save it. Right guys, so what I did, I just saved the private part of the key as a PEM file, and after that I used puttygen to convert it to PPK. That's a simple process. I've shown it in many videos. So just script it here. And what I'm gonna do now is I've opened WinSCP and I'm going to create a new connection to this newly created server, right? So let us go ahead and pick some of the details. What is our endpoint? Sorry, here it is. So we'll take this, put it in the host name. The username is testki01. So we'll say testki01, and you need to go to advanced to get the to select the private key file, right? So let me do that. Okay, so I've selected the ppk file. We'll say okay, and we'll try to say, let us just save this as well, so that we are good. I'll just say conf1. So it is saved. We'll say login. Let us see. Yep, we'll say yes, and it should get connected. Okay, so as you can see on the right hand side, this is basically representing the S3 part, and left hand side is my machine. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just try to do a simple upload. I'll say upload. I'll say okay. So it says access denied. Let me see what's the reason. Before we do any operation there, what we should do is we should come here and create a folder. You remember we had given here the user for, the folder for this particular user as folder 1. So we need to create that folder. We missed that part. Folder 01, I guess. Folder 1. So do that and say save. All right. So what we'll try to do is we'll just set up a new connection altogether now. We had already saved the settings with the name conf1, so I'm gonna say login. Let us see. All right, it is giving me error. So guys, looks like we did one mistake, right? The IAM role which we created, in that if you look at this policy, we have given only the permission at this resource level. We should also give it to everything inside this bucket, isn't it? So let's do edit, and what we'll try to do is we'll try to do some changes here. Go to JSON, change this to something like this, and what we'll do, we'll pick this. Let's say, all right, we'll save this. Okay, Now what we'll do, we'll once again try to access our WinSCP. We'll say login. So let me try to upload some file from here. Okay, let's try to reconnect. Okay, so it says this upload was successful, but error occurred while setting up the permission. So I'll show you, how to avoid this thing. For now, I'll just say skip. And if we refresh here on the right hand side, you can see this winscp.ini is available. We can quickly try to upload another file as well. Let us see if it is working well. Okay, so it goes through and it will give that error once again, which is fine. This is just warning which you can just avoid, and there's a way to suppress this warning as well. So you can see the two files got uploaded. Let me go back here to S3 bucket, and inside folder 1, if I go, you should see these two files, right? And if I just say, let's say, go ahead and delete this file, you will automatically see the changes here, right? So it's deleted. If I come here and refresh, you will see that one file would be gone, right? So this is working. Now, if I try to, let's say, press, on this option to go one level up. Let's say currently I'm operating in folder 1 within that bucket. If I want to go one level above, I cannot do that, because when this user was set up, you can see it was set up in restricted mode, right? Let me do one thing. I'll go ahead and say edit, and I'll just remove this thing, and I'll say save. So now what would happen? I will have, if I want, I would be able to go one level up. But can I do that now? No. Because in some way, when you enable, or basically when you establish this session, at that time, whatever permissions are there, that in a way gets set. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to just create a new session. So what I could do is I can go ahead and say duplicate session. So as you can see, it is giving error. It is not connecting after doing this change. I guess it is because this user doesn't have permission to do anything outside of that particular bucket. And because I have unchecked the restricted option, it would actually try to show me all the buckets. I guess that's what it is trying to do. Let us try and validate that. How can we do it? I'll go back here to the IAM role which we created, and I'm just gonna add one more policy, or attach one more policy, which is S3 read-only access. I'm gonna give this. So this should allow this role to just list all the buckets, etc. Let me try to say duplicate session once again. And as you can see, now it is working. I hope you get what was the reason. As I told you, when you do not check the restricted part, then what happens? It would it would it would try to land you, at the top part in the hierarchy, I can say. So basically, within your account, all the S3 buckets which are there would be visible to you, right? That's what it would try to do. Now let's try one thing. If I go inside this particular bucket, I would be able to upload a file even at this level now, right? Because if you remember the definition of IAM role, we have given all the permission to to everything inside this bucket. So it got uploaded successfully. Let me go back here and I'll try to get inside this bucket. Let's see what happens. Okay, I'm able to get inside. I'm able to see the details. Would I be able to upload a file? Ideally, I should not be able to, because the IAM role which I have got doesn't have permissions on the other bucket, right? I've just given read only, so that means it will be able to list everywhere, yes, but it would not be able to upload in the other bucket, right? So that part is clear to you now. Okay, let me just abort this. Now I want to show you the other use case where I'm gonna use this particular user. This server is created in one particular region, but I will be able to go ahead and actually access any of the buckets as I told you. So what I'm gonna do is I'll change this to Oregon, this which is the other bucket, and I'm gonna save folder 2 and I'll say save, and also it is restricted. If you go to this particular bucket, this Oregon bucket, here there is no folder to created yet. It is just completely empty. So we'll see that error message. That should give us an error message. And what I did quickly, I have just gone ahead and updated this particular policy. So instead of the other bucket, which was the Northern Virginia bucket, I have now updated it to Oregon bucket, right? So now we will go ahead and try to connect using the same credentials. Basically, now we have changed the property of this user, so it should land into this Oregon bucket. Okay, so we'll just go and create a new session, login. It goes through. Key got authenticated, right? But you can see we get an error which says folder 2, is not there. That type of error we are getting. So that's the issue. Let's do one thing. What we'll do is we'll go here and we'll just quickly create this folder called folder 2, right? That's the name. We'll just save this here. All right, so I just closed the WinSCP and started it again. So now it got connected successfully, and if I try to upload a file, it should go through ideally. So yep, we're able to see this WinSCP.ini. If we go here and go to this particular bucket in the folder 2, we should see this particular file, right? Okay, and if in case we go ahead and let's say delete it, it should just go away from there as well. Deleted, and if we go here, try to just refresh this, it goes through. So that's the overall demo. So I'll just summarize this for you so that you do not get confused. That's that is really important. Just few things around the permissions part. Please understand that whenever you are creating the user, for that user it is important that you specify a particular home directory, which means a bucket, and within that bucket which folder. And it will be a good practice that you make it restricted. If you do not make it restricted, basically the user would then land onto as I showed you, the user would actually go to the top level and then he can get inside any of the buckets. Sometimes you might require that type of use case. If that is what you want, you may go ahead and do that. But then you need to understand that accordingly you need to write the IAM role. If let's say you want this user to interact with multiple S3 buckets, then in your IAM role there should be all those S3 buckets should be listed in the resource section. Whereas if you want to keep it even more fine grained, then it's better that what you do, you create one IAM role per bucket, and Let's say there are 3-4 users who need to access same bucket. So you give that particular IAM role to all of these users. And for these 4 or 5 users, if they access different folders, you can set up their home directory according to that. You can set up folder 1, folder 2, folder 4, right? And you can make it restricted. So if you keep it restricted, you can be sure about this thing that a particular user cannot go any level above that, right? So that way you can go ahead and make use of it. So that was the overall demo. I hope you understood how to set it up and how to make use of it. I would request you to go ahead and try it out as well. And if you're interested in watching more such practical videos on AWS, this is the channel you should subscribe to. And if you like this video, you may go ahead and share it with someone. You can join our channel and support us as well. So do subscribe and you will be getting more such videos very soon. All right, guys, take care, keep learning. You may go ahead and check other playlists on our channel. Take care and bye bye.